Hello and welcome to another Tyranny News Network Plasmacide Chat. This one is going to be on the topic, well, it's entitled, Did Michael Cravey Anger the Gods? So the subject is the Michael Cravey mystery. Some people know him as Thomas Brinkley. And I'll try to go over just the very basics of the essential story, because this is again geared toward people who are familiar with this topic, being the demise of Michael Cravey back in March 3rd of 2014. So we're just past the 1 year mark now, unfortunately, excuse me, and it's rather late, so I'm not going to go very long here, hopefully. And we have just a few topics, and I actually have a fairly good representation of what's going to be conveyed on in this presentation visually, so it should actually make things a little smoother. So for an overview, we're going to talk about first an overview of the mystery itself. So this is where I'll just go over the basics, but I will run down the story. So stay tuned if you're somebody who's not familiar with this at all, because that in itself would give you kind of an encapsulated view of what happened. And I'll give you a little bit of the background on Michael as well, but essentially what happened is the key here, because otherwise, if that day, March 3rd, didn't happen, we wouldn't be having this, I wouldn't be doing this topic for a Plasmacide Chat. Number two, Michael's last days. We'll go over a little bit of that. Excuse me. Number three, how reports of Michael Cravey became critiques of Thomas Brinkley. And what I mean by that is that basically, in the reporting that happened right away, there was a shift from knowing who Michael Cravey was. You know, obviously law enforcement found out, and so they reported on that aspect of the story. But they also made sure, it appears, or they did, include some of the details of his background as Thomas Brinkley, which online, just like I have the pseudonym Tyranny News Network for my channel, and sometimes if you catch me through Facebook, you'll see that I'm Derek Smithers. And the only reason is, it's nothing nefarious, it's just that I didn't want to have to give up my personal information just to be able to have a Facebook page for my blog, which was supposed to be about a bunch of people and an aggregate thing. It never did turn into that, but the point was, I didn't think it had to tie to me, but of course Facebook required you to have a personal Facebook account in order to do it. So I became Derek Smithers, which is, you know, just a bogus name. Anyway. In this case, Thomas Brinkley was the name that he chose, and I believe he revealed that his name was Michael or Michael Cravey in a couple of videos, so it wasn't like this big, impervious secret. But that's the interesting thing, is not only did they go to that length in the reporting, how did they go to that length, which is another thing. If you hear my cat, by the way, how you doing, Hoax? My cat, and I have a new cat, his name is Hoax. Look, he's going to tear into my leg right here. Ah, look out, don't do that. Look at that. He tried to tear my, you know what it is he loves cords. He wants to go outside. I got him a harness. It's ridiculous. But I do want to take him out because he's, you know. Okay, and four, a notable detractor, all right, of Michael's. And five, Nicholas Cravey. Nicholas Cravey is kind of a part of the story too. Michael had a few brothers, but this was his, a younger brother of his. Who's, kind of somewhat involved in the story. So let's begin. Overview of the mystery. Okay, number one, or let's just start off. Michael was an online conspiracy theorist and noted YouTube video producer. He had unique insights into the Aurora Batman theater shooting. He really did. I have personal experience with that. We did some collaboration, some three-way conference stuff that I turned into video content. That we were all very excited. He, Christian Peterson, and myself. Christian Peterson has the YouTube channel Historical Records Vault, and for a time he was putting up videos, little snippets of the news clips that he worried, or he thought of as a commodity actually, because they may at some point in time disappear, and he thought, well, let me compile or archive these. I don't believe he's doing it anymore, or he's slowed down quite a bit. What a task that would be if he really archived all of it. But anyway. He had come to suspect that he was somehow the model or archetype for James Holmes. Now that's very, very outlandish sounding, and it's also very complicated how that came to be. But I gotta say, despite my immediate thought that that sounds like somebody who was going crazy or is crazy, or at least it's an outlandish theory, maybe a narcissistic theory. But at any rate, after time, I warmed up to it because, to be honest, I didn't give it the full attention the first pass, and it didn't strike me as a priority issue. And then, of course, once March 3rd came and Michael was not around, and I thought, wow, look at what just happened here. I went back and started reading, or rather researching and watching some of his videos again, and a couple or a number of times, because it seemed to add up that he could have been right, or if not correct in terms of the whole concept, parts of what he was getting at, I believe, were factually, they were the truth. So something to think about. He strongly suspected he knew who played the role of the shooters in the Aurora case. And I know who he was referring to, and I think he's right. And it wasn't James Holmes, by the way. Subsequent violent events seemed to have a strange connection to Michael. The Sikh temple shooting and the Wisconsin spa shooting, which you may or may not know about that one. The Sikh temple shooting, the suspect's possessions, look into that. It was connected to Aurora, some of what he had. And it was almost stereotypically so. It was kind of like he was a stereotypical example of the deranged nut who began to obsess on either James Holmes or the Aurora shooting or Batman, that kind of thing. There's a lot of that going on, the creation of the archetypical lone nut, or the person who's gone insane, the internet conspiracy theorist gone bad, right? Where conspiracy theory in itself is okay to an extent, but some people take it too far. That's the concept. He had conflict with a couple deceptive figures involved in the James Holmes activist community. And that's basically where, he learned, because he did his due diligence, he learned that the moderator, or one of the few or two, something like that, moderators of the James Holmes is Innocent Facebook group, I believe. And if not that, one of the other ones that was the top, I think there were two. One of them was likely was better, rather it was a larger group. And he found out that one of these people was an ex-felon. It was involved in a theft operation where they would dress up like this woman dressed up like the employees of a store, of a retail place, and they wouldn't reveal, but extract the merchandise, and then was selling that merchandise via an eBay account, or a number of them or something. But it was sold through eBay, and she actually had set up a storage unit, one of these storage units where you go and you padlock it and all that. Well, she would set the thing up where it had racks with stuff on it and shelves with all the products, and she would literally arrange to have people come and view the material there for local, but she also did sell online and ship some of the material, or some of these products. Anyway, it was like $150,000 of stuff. And it was just a little unusual how she was let off of some of these charges, rather. And she had a RICO. There was a RICO charge that she beat the rap on somehow. And it's not to say that she wasn't convicted of the RICO stuff. I think she was, but it was that her sentencing was not reflective of that racketeering aspect, which is not something you normally see with an individual. It's usually something that's attached to charges of crimes committed by corporations or larger groups. Anyway, Michael's dad died, and he had a stroke, and so he died just 5 or 6 months before Michael's situation on March 3rd. And Michael was attentive to this. He died and subsequently moved from his apartment in Gainesville back home to Cross City. I believe it's called Cross City. I always get confused there. But at any rate, it's about an hour west of Gainesville, where he was living. And he went there, moved back in with his family because he was helping with his father's condition. He was essentially I don't know, I don't want to get it wrong out of respect for people who were in that situation, but he had a stroke, and it was really extremely physically immobilizing and debilitating, so speech and all that stuff. He seemed like he was essentially not communicative, or very limited communication, and he just got worse apparently in the end and wound up dying. So not a happy end for so that did impact Michael, obviously, and it was a part of the story, and remains part of this overall story. On the morning of March 3rd, 2014, he drove early to the university in Gainesville. And it's not certain why. And we're kind of feeling like he left at 6. So he had time to get there because it's about a 50-minute to an hour long drive to get to Gainesville. So apparently he was there just before 7 a.m. in the Gainesville, on the university at Lee Hall, in the parking area there. He was able to get there in such short time. And even though it had just, by the way, that Monday was, I believe, the first day of spring break. So everyone was gone from the school. How convenient, or how coincidental, right? A couple, the Prestons, state that he attacked Cliff Preston, the gentleman, stabbing him 7 times before fleeing. He was also said to be laughing by one of the witnesses that observed there was a woman or a girl that was in a car who sat, parked. She was dropping someone off or whatever, but she witnessed this, and she was the one that first called 911 to report this. And that 911 call is very interesting, I should add. Somebody pointed out that on the call, the dispatcher refers to the suspect, to the victim or the injured party as the patient. Where's the patient? You ask these questions, think twice, and that is unusual. And it calls to mind this being a complete ruse in terms of fabricating the 911 call. And I wouldn't put it past them at all. In fact, I believe that's been done more often than we would estimate, and recently. Gainesville Police Department began pursuing Michael immediately before, I'm sorry, that actually should read, this is Gainesville University Police Department, which have the same in Florida, I believe, and maybe this is the same across the United States, but the University PD, in this case, certainly Florida, I did confirm they have the same authority, but there are just a few technicalities in how they deal with the issue of pursuits. I think they immediately go to a handoff when they reach a certain point, like the border of the university itself, which would be pretty quick, I would think. So they began pursuing him immediately before the chase was called off as too dangerous. So it didn't go on too long before they claimed that Michael began driving erratically. And there's some film footage of part of that. They won't release the whole thing, but part of it has been released, showing some fairly dangerous maneuvers and stuff by the person driving the black Jeep Liberty. He then visits the local news station to speak with weatherman Mike Potter. That's a huge, weird part of the story. One of my videos I've done recently addresses it to a limited extent. And essentially what it comes down to is my theory now, and it begins to make sense. Lots of the parts fit now when you look at it as Mike Potter or somebody rather, pretending or impersonating Mike Potter, using that name, explaining that, yes, I'm Mike Potter, the weather guy, but I'm calling you about something else and I want to tell you some information that you're going to want, or I have something for you, would you meet with me? And I think that might have been the motivation for Michael getting into his car, driving early to Gainesville, but not to the university, if you catch my drift. All right, then he drives back toward the university and pulls into the McDonald's drive-thru. So, despite the fact that he was in he stabbed a guy and then went on a high-speed chase that got called off, he supposedly winds up like 2.5 miles from the scene of the stabbing at a McDonald's drive-thru. Does that make sense to anybody? Of course it doesn't make sense to anybody. It's fucking ridiculous. He receives text messages from his mother along the way, actually, as he's getting close to McDonald's, that he doesn't understand. In other words, she's in class, apparently, according to her testimony as a teacher, and she didn't have a lot of time, and she received word, maybe by text or a phone call, that there was a chase and that Michael was wanted. They had an APB out on him for a stabbing, and she was confused, and so she texted him, "Are you okay?" or something like that. I would assume it was that was the nature of it, so that he responded with, "Yeah, I'm fine, why?" or something like that, that type of thing. So it was confusing. He didn't understand the relevance. Then when he's in the drive-thru, he gets a call from his brother. This is one of his older brothers, and learns he's wanted for a stabbing and evading police. And this is the interesting part here, or one interesting aspect. He says to his brother at that point, "I'm being set up. I need to figure this out." That was actually printed in the paper. So when this situation occurred, and Michael may or may not have actually had anything to do with that stabbing, we don't know. It appeared, according to his brother, that he was unaware of the situation, which, I can't imagine a brother telling another brother in a phone conversation that I don't know what you're talking about type of thing, when in fact he had done it, if he had done it. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I think you would confide in your brother or to your brother that it's true. Especially if you were so nonchalant about being 2.5 miles from where this crime apparently occurred and just in the drive-thru. Not very panicked or anything, apparently. All right, so an unmarked squad car identifies him later. He takes off. An unmarked squad car eventually, this is hours later, they catch up with him and identify him and begin to tail him, okay? Other cars are dispatched to the area as well, but the one unmarked car, at least one unmarked car, I believe, was noticed by Michael. I think he figured it out, because again, he thought, I'm being set up, I need to figure this out. So I think what he tried to do is he tried to take some evasive maneuvers fairly quickly and really went for it and wound up getting in a clash. So basically, Michael crashes his Jeep on Archer Road. And this is by a shopping center where this then unfolds. The second events of the day that are violent and horrible. And flees into the shopping center going in and out of stores. He's reported to first have been spotted. They had eyes on him. They said he's going into the Pier 1. I believe. But then from there, he kind of comes right out and goes down, walks the line, and he goes into another store, he goes into a PetSmart maybe. He talks to some people in the parking lot, walks up to them and asks, do you know where the Verizon store or Verizon Center is, whatever. And I believe from looking at the map, there is a Verizon Center, like the one shopping center over, or maybe two. It's not in that center, though, so I think he was confused about whether there was one there and was hoping there was. Because, again, he crashed at that point. It wasn't like his intent was to pull on over to the shopping center. He wound up there as a result of getting in a crash. And I want to add also, for those folks that don't know, if you look at the very few images, there are only 2 or 3 that exist of Michael's Jeep. And I believe no video footage of it. They have some video of the other car for a brief moment, but not of the Jeep, I don't believe. But in the few photos, if you note, when you're looking at it, the passenger airbag has deployed. Now, I was under the impression that, and I believe it's true, that most modern cars, or all modern cars above a certain year, and certainly Michael's would qualify, have a feature where the passenger airbag does not deploy if there isn't enough weight detected in the seat. And there may even be a light showing you, or some kind of indicator in the dash, in the notification saying passenger airbag disabled, something like that. But the passenger airbag deployed. So something to think about. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. There wasn't anything heavy enough to actually trigger that airbag in the passenger seat found in his car. They did claim to find a clamshell style phone. They said it was his, but he had an iPhone. It wasn't his. And they never found the iPhone, supposedly. Now, his brother, which we'll see in a little bit, actually claimed that he had access to Michael's accounts online. And it's an interesting story about that in itself. But he had access. He went and looked at the iPhone, the Apple Store, or whatever, billing for Michael's phone and saw that it was pinging hourly for 11 days. And that was only because the information in the report he was able to see online only went for 11 days from that point. He thinks it was a few days longer, which is, I'm not sure if that's even possible because of the charging factor. But, you got to figure, look, people could put a phone on a charger if they're in possession of it. So who had his phone and what were they doing with it? And there's some other interesting stuff relating to the phones and Apple and iPhones coming up here, a very bizarre feature of this story that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and I only came to realize this recently. Excuse me. Okay, continuing on. Pardon me. Police block a perimeter of escape routes behind and to the side, at least one side. So they have three of the 4 sides of this mall or shopping center area blocked, basically, at that point, which is an interesting part, too, because I'm not sure just exactly how much traffic was being allowed in that area. Probably none or little. So they're blocking those escape routes. And many cops begin the hunt for him at the shopping center. So they begin to move in, some in vehicles, a few on foot. He's spotted exiting Best Buy by a Lieutenant Michael Shibula. And I believe I misspelled this. This should be Schibula. I'm fairly sure that's it. So I apologize for the misspelling. This is wrapping up now, at least in terms of the overview of the mystery. After being ordered to drop the hatchet that he has, drop the hatchet, or drop it, whatever. This is what they claim. This isn't something that any outside unauthority person has been able to view either in the closed circuit footage that they would definitely have had. There was lots of footage there. Somebody had actually commented in a thread that, yeah, I know that area well, and I know they have closed circuit capturing tons of air, or if not all, of that parking area and the shops, the facades of all these shops, because the police have claimed to have made drug busts by these CCTV feeds directly and only. So it feels like, okay, well, if they could get that, then they probably could get Michael in this whole scene. So they tell him to drop it. He said he'd be carrying this hatchet. Although in one of the tweets, the first tweet from, I believe, the newspaper that used to be the paper of the university, but then became a larger paper, their tweet that first reported this said that he was with a hammer. He had a hammer, not a hatchet. He charges, apparently, with the hatchet raised over his head. Now, I won't go into all of this, because there are a lot of little details and a lot of things that don't add up and that seem to be clear in terms of what really happened here. And do I think he had the hatchet? No, I don't think so. There probably wasn't a hatchet. That's my first thought. Second of all, would he have raised it and charged him? No, I don't think so. And this might help you to understand why I would think that. Shabula fires all 15 rounds of his .40 caliber. If you can just imagine, boom, 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 boom. Just go, go, go. He just fired, he's unloaded his clip, .40 caliber bullets at Michael, and he drops. Many of the bullets, I have seen his autopsy report. It's not very illustrative. It's not enlightening as to what happened. More so, it's kind of just the technicalities that, where the bullets were found. He got shot, a couple of bullets went in the back of his legs and the back of his butt cheek, and he had as many bullets in his backside as he did in his front side. So I don't know about you, but it seems to be a little preposterous to think that you would be shot in the back in any part of your rear area if you're charging forward at it with a hatchet at someone, or just charging forward at all. All right. Seen in news video, they administer CPR before transporting to the hospital where he's declared dead. All right. Now that's all I'm going to cover in this chapter, if you will, or section, because we need to move on here. There's a lot you can look up. Michael's last days. All right. Here's some points relating to Michael's last days with us. Michael stopped producing videos for about 2 months before March 3rd when this occurred. Now, he did seem to get a little bit stressed, maybe a little depressed. He also had an issue. He had a girlfriend that had, for whatever reason, they had to separate. And so because they were living together, but they had to separate. Not sure what it caused. Maybe it was related to his father's situation. I'm not sure why. Or her employment. I'm not sure. But they had to separate. But she said that it was, but they were still in love, and it was still a matter of them communicating constantly. Myself and at least one other friend and YouTube producer heard him describe what seemed like gang stalking. Now, it's like the targeted individual scenario. Now, a lot of that information is very difficult to digest because it seems like there are too many instances of people who seem and are probably actually very normal in a sense, but they're confused about how things work in life and what the likelihood of something like this is happening to them, or they may suspect there's a reason, but that reason isn't very rational, but it just overwhelms them and they get caught up in it, and the next thing you know, I mean, when it's about you and your life, a lot of people get that complex, and then as you become mentally ill, people who are just simply mentally ill and start having this type of experience, it's not just paranoia, it's also the tendency of the person who is maybe heading towards schizophrenia to begin to, everything funnels into them, it becomes, everything is about them, and eventually many of them become Jesus, or they become the God of their world. And it's not to say that they may literally feel that way, but it does tend to be a very self-centered direction that they head in, but that's just in that case. A lot of these other people are going to be interpreted as being mentally ill or having delusional thinking, or just not thinking rationally when they think they're gang stalked, or describe how they're a targeted individual, and they may be, people may be able to blow off or excuse away a lot of these details when in reality they maybe are. We know this does happen. Michael described feeling like he was being watched or monitored, but admitted he might be experiencing paranoid narcissism. So I find it very interesting, and it's very indicative of how level-headed he was. I always thought he was brilliant, and he seemed like a very, very intelligent man, especially for his age at, I believe, 28. I mean, he was a very, very smart cookie, you know. I mean, I'm now in my 40s, and, you know, yeah, I don't know how much smarter I think I might be in any area than Michael. But at any rate, he would indicate that, really, or rather, what was indicative of that was like an example here. You know, he said, hey, I could just be experiencing paranoid narcissism. So understand that he knew what this type of thought process would appear like to others, and also something he needed to deal with was that fact as well. All right, he was in frequent communication with his ex-girlfriend. That's another important factor. All right, this is interesting here too. March 3rd was a Monday. And on that day, he exchanged many text messages with his girlfriend all weekend as well. Yes, all weekend up to that Monday, there were many text messages. I am in possession of about half of those messages. And I guess I could describe them as all screen captures from an iPhone. And this is the girlfriend's. This is not his side of the conversation with her. It was her messages, or rather their conversation, snapshot from her phone, screen captured from her phone. And there are about, in my possession, I have about, I'd say 24, a couple dozen of these images, which have about 7 or 8 messages on average, you know, depending upon how big they were, or, you know, and then of course it's from her to him and him to her. So I have half, and I'm saying I've got 24 of these. So we're looking at about 50 pages of, so it's dozens and dozens of, maybe a few hundred messages all told that would begin. I'm assuming I have some that appear to come, well, I know there's some from that Saturday, that Sunday, and then that Monday. So from just those few days. The text messages are relevant for both their content and because some take place during the supposed stabbing and police pursuit. So we're talking about just before 7 a.m. on that Monday is the stabbing. And so keep that in mind when we're looking at these messages. All right. I can only be sure that the following messages were exchanged on that Monday morning. This is important. There are some messages I have pages of, because when she screen captured them, she didn't do it chronologically. She did them in chunks and sections. And so when I get them, I'm looking at them as, you know, screen cap 001, screen cap 002, and down the line. But chronologically, they're out of place. So when I take them and lay them out and try to figure out based on what times are shown and what dates, they only show the dates at the beginning of that section, and if that section is off that screen, it's above, you know, or below what you're looking at, you may actually see a section and not know what the date is. And so you're looking then to try to correlate it by just the time. You know, if it's 6:15 p.m. or a.m., whatever, and you go back and try to see what images might, or parts of the message might tie into the previous. Very difficult. And so I was unable to determine any of the pages were from that Monday, except for one. And that's what we're going to look at right now. All right. Now this is a recreation here I made of, so I go wide format. But this is from an iPhone capture. So this really is a full and exact replica of it. I made sure that I didn't do anything odd. The only thing I added are those question marks, and I'll tell you why in a second. So the first two are just Michael to her. And by the way, her only two on this page, which are also from that Monday, are redacted for her privacy. All right, I didn't ask her to put this in here. So please understand, this may be the first time these have ever been seen publicly, or at least these few messages, and the messages that were definitely from that Monday. So, but I feel like it's important, and it's not revealing her stuff, it's just revealing him. So, and he doesn't speak of her per se here. So, the Sunday prior, there were 2 messages, and I don't know how many before this. In fact, I think, no, this was it. These are the only 2 messages from that. And they may have phone calls or other things, but what I'm saying, though, is that there are only 2 messages from him to her. And how I know that is because when they show you the date, you know, Sunday, March 2nd, well, that's the beginning of the section. So we only see 2 before it gets to Monday. So he only did 2. Let me read them. The first one is, you think they are communicating with you through the way they interact with me. He makes it as a statement. It's not posed as a question, although I'm not sure if they would have done that, if that was in his behavior pattern there. And the next one's very interesting, though. You are expecting me to kill you. Now, I don't know the context. It sounds more, mysterious and potentially, homicidal or something. But it's not clear what the context is. In fact, it's extremely tough to even get a clue as to what that's about at all. So for me to say it's one thing or another, I don't know. It references kill, so that's it. But other than that, I'm not sure how many things we can tie in before to give it weight more so than, let's say, just it just being coincidence or something, because then he is killed supposedly the next day. So now here's Monday the 3rd, and this is the bulk of it, and I don't know if there are any beyond this. Like I say, there may have been, but I can't tell, and it doesn't appear, I couldn't definitely say from the message content that anything made sense beyond this point. So this is all I've got that I know. So here we go. It's now Monday, March 3rd, 4:05 a.m. Now she is on the West Coast in Pacific time zone. Let me say then that these are from her phone, meaning that these times are Pacific. Now, what time is that then on the in Florida in the Eastern time zone? It's 7:05 a.m. Now, the stabbing occurs at just before 7 a.m. In fact, some of the activity that occurs then is literally just in the moment, like 6:58, 7:03. This is the time frame of the chase begins, all of that. So he begins his chase right at that point, and he is involved in a car chase at this point at 7:05 a.m., almost certainly. And yet at that time, and by the way, the first message is going to be at that time. That's why it's set at that time on that first message. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a time at all. It would just say Monday, March 3rd. That's relevant to the first message. Nice little warm-up, he says. I have no idea what that means. Very interesting, but and it's interesting because it's like a reference to what? The stabbing? Is he talking about he stabbed someone? Nice little warm-up? But it could be about anything. We just don't know. Then again, like I said, the two redacted messages that were the only two in this case, from this Monday, that were to him. There were many others in the other pages of text that we won't look at because I'm not sure what days they're from, and they're probably not from this Monday. But in this case, we don't know what she says here. And then the next one is, you've seen me get arrested when I shouldn't have. Now that's interesting. It's interesting again because it appears to be a reference to his involvement with law enforcement, or his felonious or maybe potentially illegal. It has an arrest aspect to it, and they would be looking to arrest this man who they claim was involved in a stabbing incident. If anything, to figure out, do we have this guy? Is he the guy? And did this even happen? And what happened? And then followed by, but this time it's different. And finally, immortals blocked him. Immortals blocked him. I have no idea. I have no idea. Their conversation was very esoteric at times. In fact, I would say for the average person, it would have seemed almost like it would have been difficult to understand any of it. Because I know, and I'm only familiar with enough to say, okay, I get it. This is typical conversation between two people who are, talking about things hypothetically or theorizing and talking about conspiracies and some of the more, advanced concepts and all that. They seem to be able to do that pretty well, the two of them. But now let's talk about the interesting things here I want to point out on this. Boom. First message is at 7:05 a.m. Now it says Pacific. What I meant is to say it's the reverse of that. I got them conflated. I meant to say Eastern time. But of course it's going to say Pacific time here because she's on the West Coast. Now, I want to point this out. Over 24 pages of messages that I have in my possession, and I only have half. So there's another 24 out there. But I've got 24 pages, and I'm looking at all the messages on there. Only this page has no message times in that screen cap. It's blank. It doesn't have this. It doesn't have some arbitrary time. It doesn't have all zeros. It doesn't have anything. It's just nothing. There's nothing there. So these messages do not have an accompanying time. Now, and again, to reiterate, Every single other page does. So of this page, which happens to be, that's another reason why I suspect this is probably the only page with texts from Monday. Because let's say that the reason they're not there is because authorities or perpetrators in this whatever happened to Michael, which I believe was an operation of some kind. I'm not sure who or why or how, but it seems to be that that's what happened. That's all signs are pointing to that. Very little points to it not being. I mean, it adds up like a poorly written, crime drama or something. It's ridiculous. So I think that if they, here's what I think may have happened, and I don't know how this works, and I'm not familiar with the iPhone. Never had an Apple phone. I've had lots of Macintosh computers, Apple computers, but I moved on from that, and I don't do the Apple thing anymore. The way I understand it, though, is, if they had concerns about, well, first of all, we would have been, and I'm virtually certain they were monitoring Michael's communications completely. Now, his communications would include text messages sent to and received from the ex-girlfriend, okay? So this is a page from her phone showing the messages. And so I would assume that it's very likely, if they were concerned about the message content, that's one thing. But if they were more concerned about the times, if the only thing that really concerned them was the times, and they thought, what, why don't we just, we'll just dump the times, so that whatever appears to be relevant information here, if it does at all, if anything, it won't conflict. Like, for instance, the concept of, hey, if it said over here it occurred at just after 7 or just before 7, well, he was reported to have been involved in a stabbing incident at that exact time. And so how could he take the time out even to text her? Was he beating this guy and stabbing him and texting her at the same time? No. But here's the thing. If they did delete this, and I don't know if that's possible, but let me say that it would not surprise me in the slightest if these agencies or whoever did this could just simply go in and boop, get rid of that page's timestamps. And, well, here's another thing. There's also the possibility that the girlfriend that gave me these or sent these to me, which she did by email via her phone, because I believe, so I think she said that I'm not sure how I can get these to you. And I was thinking she would use a program or an app, some kind of app that was export the text, and I would have appreciated that, actually. And I actually suggested that, and then, but I said, but if you can't do that, can you just screen cap them? And then she said, I'm not sure how to get those to you, though. And then so in the end, though, I got them, and they were just sent by email. Maybe a few emails where she just attached them. So she sent them from the phone to me. And I don't think, from all of that, I'm thinking to myself, well, that just to me doesn't seem at all possible, although it is still slightly possible, that she somehow went and edited this image. Nothing indicated in the comparison of this page to the others, or this image to the others, that she would have done that, and I don't think she did. I really don't. I think that whoever did this, unless I'm missing something here, and I don't think I am, because like I say, this is the anomaly here. Very unusual. That's the end of Michael's last days. All right, now, says Michael Thomas, this is where I was talking about how, the story of the Michael Cravey was injured, he was involved in a stabbing, and then they wound up killing him. This is the story that we're reporting, the big story of the day. How did that become also a story about Michael's background and his involvement with YouTube under the moniker Thomas Brinkley? But it did. On the very day. In fact, even that morning still. And I'll describe it. So here's the paper that I think is going to be the most relevant, and it's the Gainesville Sun, which goes by Gainesville.com for the website. And this is where I obtained, I've never worked with the actual physical paper itself. I've always been getting the information from the website, as it's the most accessible. And the reporter who reported on it that day and subsequent days, and kind of the assigned reporter or staff writer or whomever that handled it, she was somebody who wrote some interesting stories. Here's the first, or one of the first ones. And let me see well, I don't see the date of the story in this one, but these were all beginning. The one that's of most interest was from that very morning. So keep that in mind. What I want to show you here is the point I'm getting at. is Monivet Cordero, indicated as the staff writer. She's the one who writes these. Actually, this one was published on Thursday, March 6th, so 3 days afterward. But this one is about the reports of him laughing, as this gets into the details a little more so of the initial police report, which wasn't public information apparently at that time. It wasn't available to anyone outside of, apparently, reporters like Monivet Cordero, who, by the way, is a former student at the University of Florida there, the campus there in Gainesville, and who also has what appears to be a friendship with some of the law enforcement in both at the university, in the Gainesville University Police Department squad, and also in the General Gainesville City Police Department. And she does have a professional relationship, I'm sure, as a reporter or staff writer, but she's also got that personal intimate, the bantering and all that between them via tweets you can find. This is kind of how I was able to determine that. And I also want to then show you this. So I, at one point, decided, well, this was in May, early May, when I finally posted this. But it was, I came across an article. It was actually because it was at that time, it was just a day or two before this, where they finally released, they said, the full Gainesville Police Department. I had previously received the university police report on the incident, but had not received the official Gainesville version. Well, according to this article, they released it or made it available, and so then the article is written up by Monivet Cordero, or Cordera, who writes some stuff that was just, I mean, to her credit, it's written fairly well, but it's suspicious as hell to me. Very suspicious, especially the earlier ones. But the ones relating to this, this is actually the interesting thing, though. That was not apparently made available to everyone. But see, you can get it online. Well, I know somebody who's a researcher who twice went online, signed up to an account to be able to pay to order a copy, maybe $12, $15 or something, to have that sent to them, okay? Twice. They never received it. And they said to me, I'm not going to do it a third time, which I thought was probably a good idea. But why? Then somebody I know who's a university professor fills out the application for it, sends the money, boom, boom, gets it. I don't understand, but there you go. But at this time I didn't see it, and all I was getting was the information filtered through the reporting of Monivet Cordera. And the reason I want to show this to you also is that this is my blog. And so even though it's not super relevant, I did do some stuff on Michael Cravey. I've done other stuff on the Aurora Batman Theater shooting event, and I do some also linking to some videos I've done, but you can find that through my YouTube channel. But hey, this is how it started for me. I came up with Tyranny News Network, reporting the misdeeds of the ruling class. I made a really nice blog. I wrote lots of articles. I have about 50 articles I wrote. I stopped working on it. I've barely done anything in the past, let's say, year. It's real spotty. After a point in time. However, I was prolific for a long time, and you want to definitely go to tyrannynews.com, tyrannynews.com, and check out my blog. Read some of these prior articles. I mean, just these titles alone. 9/11 symbology within children's illustration. An artist's quiet scream not heard by Americans. A response to the accusations of deception advanced by Deanna Spingola. Yes, she ripped into me, mostly Sophia Smallstorm, but because of my involvement with her, she ripped into me too. What can you say? Sophia's just dragging me down, right? Now it's more about Deanna's dragging herself down. It's unfortunate, but because she's right on a lot of things, but she got it all wrong this time. And it's not by mistake. It's not an accident. A lot of people doing the work of someone, of some group, of some overall agenda. And I'm not sure who or why, but I mean, I have my ideas, and I could be right, but all right. Also, I want to show you this. It's very funny. As I was digging around doing some research, I also want to point out that I had come across something which was and this was one of these, this is found through Justia. It was Cravey v. Gainesville Police Department, but the defendant was listed as James Egan Holmes, Gainesville Police Department, Monivet Cordero, and Peter Lanza. The plaintiff is Michael Cravey. So, and there is an actual document. It's I don't recall actually seeing the the suit itself. I think I saw only the response from the judge who dismissed the whole thing because it was the fancy work of none other than Jonathan Lee Riches, the world's most litigious man. He is really funny. He gets himself involved in this stuff, though. I'm not sure why, but I'm also, hey, Jonathan, if you're watching, come on, man. I know you may be doing it because you're on the take, really, because there's nothing else you can do. You want to spend the rest of your life in jail? No, obviously not. But, I mean, I know what you're up to. I mean, come on. We're not idiots. It's too bad. And, maybe you want to trust somebody and tell them what's going on, so maybe they've got ideas as to how you can break free from that, dude. Let's get real. I mean, come on. I'm hoping you've done that. I mean, you're a smart guy. You're hella funny. You probably could be doing something on the up and up. I'm not sure what, but I virtually guarantee you would be a commodity in a lot of different fields. But what you're doing is unique, and yeah, I got you. And it's boring to be sitting around in jail, I'm sure, or prison. Huh? All right, this is from one of those. This is from that report, actually, from day one, I believe. This was day one, the reporting. Now, let me tell you about this article. This is just a clip that I thought was relevant from it. The article in the Gainesville Sun, which is at Gainesville.com, by Monavet Cordero, on the 3rd, was first published, I believe, at 9:30. And then it was updated, I believe, once, but maybe twice. But I believe that the updates were at 11:30 and possibly at 1 p.m., so 1 in the afternoon. But 11:30 may have been the last update. I could be mistaken on it. It's 11:30 or 1, but it's the last update, and there may have only been that one update. And by that time, and again, stabbing at 7, this is all same-day reporting. So somehow, she gets to this. Cravey went by the name Thomas Brinkley on Facebook and YouTube pages. In several videos, Cravey said he was at the center of a conspiracy theory involving James Holmes, the shooter who killed 12 people at a movie theater in Colorado. May I add that I get really upset when I see that shooter word. This is ridiculous. Now, this is actually a criticism of Monavet Cordero. I don't know whether this was before or after the point at which James Holmes' defense switched strategies to admission of guilt. He did it, but he's crazy. And if this wasn't past that time, then basically we had a suspect. A trial had not yet occurred, and the suspect is being referred to by Monavet as the shooter who killed 12 people at a movie theater in Colorado. Give me a break. That's fucking ridiculous. And shooter. I mean, when did that happen? That's almost like a predictable point in time where suddenly people are referring to these guys as shooters. You know what? It may be the indicator of the patsy. If it's a patsy event where the shooter was, substituted with someone else, or they had him doped up on scopolamine or something, boom. You can tell because they refer to him as the shooter. Certainly James Holmes is one. Another example would be Adam Lanza. And potentially that other guy out there in Arizona, right? Jared Loeffner. Oh, this is the other relevant part. A 38-year-old woman who did not wish to be identified by name said she and Cravey argued online about the various James Holmes conspiracy theories. Gee, I wonder if that might be the 38-year-old woman that he doxed, finding out that she was essentially being a bit deceptive by starting up this Facebook group for James Holmes' innocence, while at the same time having a felonious background, and it would look to any reasonable person that she may be an informant for the FBI, because that's the kind of thing they do. The FBI is pretty much exclusively now in the business of terrorist acts, both domestically and overseas. They handle a lot of overseas stuff now. They're really branching out outside of their authority. Hey, but you got to hand to them, right? You got to take that extra grab for glory if you want to make changes in this world, apparently, or if you want to get your paycheck. Or collect 2 paychecks. A lot of these guys are getting more than one. And the girls, too. In her case, I think maybe she didn't want to get into this, but hey, she's in it now, apparently. So whoever this person is, somehow they got in contact with her. Now, how did they do that? Think of the steps involved. First of all, they know we got a guy named Michael Cravey. He just was involved in the stabbing. He doesn't know these people, the Prestons, apparently. He's no longer a student at the university. So what do? You go to the public sources of information. You find out, what do we know about the guy? But at what point in any of the public information on Michael Cravey is the connection to Thomas Brinkley? Well, my guess would be slim to none, okay? And if that's the case, then I have to look at this 38-year-old woman who they then magically get in contact with, because 38-year-old woman, she, if it's the person I think it is, and I'm virtually certain it is, she didn't really know Michael as Michael Cravey, although she did come to know him that way. But her first interactions with him were definitely as Thomas Brinkley. So how does she then suddenly become a part of this story? Well, maybe she decided to make a call and phone it in. Hey, I've got a tip for you. That guy you want is the guy that I had disagreements with on, about the whatever. I think if that's the case, then it's definitely somebody who is a shady operator who is maybe executing part of a plan, moving to the next line in the script. And maybe there was someone on the receiving end of that script, an editor at the paper or Montevet herself, who was basically sitting there tapping, waiting for that call. Like, oh, wow, oh, really, tell me all about it. What do you know? What's your name? And then, let's get these aspects down so I can make them part of the story. I mean, that's what it looks like happened here. I mean, ultimately, if I have to decide from what information I have, yeah, I would say that this is this Misty Hoosier person, okay, that got into it with and threatened Michael and was, in fact, correctly identified as a felon and somebody who had some very unusual, RICO charges leading to almost nothing in the way of a sentence. A lot of stuff was dismissed, and I think maybe the RICO charges had been dismissed, which, by the way, when charges are dismissed, it doesn't mean you're not guilty of it. You may have been guilty, and that was admitted to, or they declared you so, but it was just that it was thrown out. I don't know how that works, but also some of the stuff she was charged for, it still was not receiving the weight of the sentencing was very light, if at all. They were giving her too many breaks. Also, he filed a restraining order at one point too, and she never replied. And he was very cautious about how he dealt with her in terms of, he actually dropped the charges. He dropped while he went to court for this restraining order, and she didn't appear. So the judge ordered there to be a follow-up where she was then going to be contacted and told to appear. But before that happened, Michael actually dropped the charges because he felt like, I don't know her intent, and I don't want to be a bad guy and draw her into this in a way that isn't right if, in fact, she really does feel, screwed by me. But then, these threats happened, I believe, after that, in which she essentially said, look, I'm going to come over there. We're going to work this out right now. This is ridiculous. Come over there. And it's like, if someone's coming over to your house and you're not invited and they're not asking for invitation, and you're somebody that's involved in you've got this conflict, yeah, that's a threat. Anyway, but he was a rational guy, and he handled it, I feel, probably like I would, or probably better than I would have. But her story is a little different. And that's where it gets a little interesting, too. And this is kind of partly what I'll be covering here next in just a moment. So, a notable detractor, Poseidon. Here's the guy that comes out and starts blogging and leaving comments immediately after this. I mean, literally, I believe it was maybe the day after, maybe the day of this event with Michael on March 3rd. And certainly within just less than a week's time, he's done his full analysis. And I mean the research as well. And it seemed as if the research included things that, in my opinion, would not have been publicly available. For instance, stuff that would have required having a license as a private investigator or as a law enforcement officer or someone in a government agency that has the credentials to sign up for. I mean, you have to pay for these services as well, but you can't just pay if you don't have your license as a PI or as in law enforcement. But I think these services, of which there are 4 or 5 major ones, where they do have this type of information, and much of it is literally impossible to get in the public domain. It's not there. You have to go, and it has a lot of things to do with connections between people, like family members and stuff, that may appear like you can see all that on the public side. It's not true. A lot of that stuff isn't available, and so this guy was writing about stuff that seemed like he had access to that type of information. But let's look at Poseidon. What do we know about him? He is likely the publisher and author of material at the website takeourworldback.com, and we'll take a look at that site here in just a moment, a couple slides down the line here. He has been active since 2005, mostly espousing that 9/11 was a Zionist conspiracy. What I found is at his takeourworldback.com, and you can go there now and it's there, there are tons of articles, really quite a lot. And it appears he's written them all, although I don't believe he actually credits himself or notes that in the article itself there on his site here. It may be noted elsewhere where these also get picked up. I've noticed some of these articles appearing in other publications, not huge ones, but ones that deal in either alternative news or in conspiracy-related news. But all the articles, so many of them, I would say only a few, very, very few, are about anything other than 9/11. Everything else relates to 9/11 at least. And he's at least admitting Zionist conspiracy. Well, my opinion is, yeah, sure, Israel, Zionism, the Mossad, and the Cyanim in America. There was no shortage of the Cyanim in America who were more than willing to do their part and not know why or any of that, and go to their death without whispering a word of it, I'm sure. But, so that's kind of the cover. That I've noticed a lot of these people who I have identified as being disinformation operatives, or operatives who are working for the bad guys in a cover type operation, just kind of making sure that everyone's in control, and also identifying anybody of note. Maybe Michael was one of those people that was identified as interesting, as needing to be dealt with for some reason. But 9/11 tends to be the one that they use as the established cred theory, right? Like, oh, I know 9/11 was an inside job and Israel was involved. Oh, okay, well then come here, buddy, let's have intimate sex now. You know, I can trust you with everything, but I won't wear a condom. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like 9/11 is the credibility building theory that you espouse. Now, why do I say that? Because 9/11 has been so many years, I don't think these guys are sweating it. 9/11 to them is like, yeah, we got away with that. So, yeah, why don't you tell them that you believe in 9/11 was a scam? Yeah, I'm not threatened by them. Yeah, you tell the whole world. And apparently, it doesn't matter how many people you tell. Shout it from the mountaintops because it's not going to turn into anything negative for us. We're fine. So I think that's kind of how that started. And then it seems to have snowballed. I see it happening all the time. So that's his one claim to fame. Now, he may have one or two little other things he's willing to work on, but what's he really doing? It's certainly not harming the bad guys. We'll see why in a minute, why that might be true. I suspect he is a person posting comments related to the Aurora shooting previously as well. And I'll say, let me explain. This is before Michael's event and potential passing on the 3rd of March of 2014. Prior to that, but after the Batman theater shooting, he claimed to be authoring a book. This guy, who I think was Poseidon. I'm not certain of this, but I think that he was going by Poseidon, or at one point, and I can't recall, I don't see my notes on this, but I took some notes. I was trying to chase down who this guy was, and I think Poseidon was who this guy was. So he claimed to be authoring a book that exposed Aurora as being a cover-up of research that Holmes was involved in. Seedy, nefarious, biochemical or neurological research, some kind of advanced program or some kind of covert, black op type operation thing or research. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. As I'm reading that, well, the one thing you should just know with this is that even in the conspiracy community, where everyone's looking at this from an alternative perspective, Aurora was seen as being this, that, or the other. But there was at least some pockets of consensus and different ideas. Not with this thing. This guy had an entirely unique, unlike any other, that stood on its own, in and of itself, as its own theory. That's not normal. But hey, it could have been the truth, right? Well, I don't know. Coming from Poseidon, it seems more like disinformation to me. You just have to tell it for yourself. So let's take a look. Here is the site. This is Take Our World Back. Now, I want to point out, like I said, his articles are oftentimes, or rather I've seen at least sometimes, are picked up other places. It may be that that's the goal. Or it may be that this is the material he could lead people to if he wants. But he'll take snippets of this and insert them into comments as he makes his way around, spreading disinformation and trying to demoralize people and all that stuff. But one of the reasons that I have for thinking this is the case is I look at the site and I think, you know what? In fact, I'm almost certain the entire site, not one graphic exists. Lots of articles, lots of pages. It's not very well cross-linked. I mean, the material is there. The pages are there. But how many links to them and how you get to them, I wouldn't know. There's no searchability, none of that. And of course, look at it. It's got a blue background. It's like he exported it from a Word doc he did and turned it into this. And there's some embedded links. He does a lot of the embedded links. But this is what you get. So this is very unusual. I can tell you myself, we saw the blog that I did, I showed you. That's because I'm a designer. I have a a background in that, and I have a marketing background as well, so it's obvious that I'm not going to do something like this. I'm going to give more and create kind of a pleasing framework that really kind of makes the whole process easier of digging around and seeing what I've got. And of course, images are also very helpful, right? Especially when you're describing things. So concepts are just completely unknown if you're seeing the text from a distance like you are now. It says, take our world back. Subtext is, or subtitle, Government and Media Deceptions Exposed. Oh, what a guy. Thank you, Poseidon. I'm so glad that you're exposing the government and the media. You know what? I think it's been done. But hey, it's another voice, right? Add your voice to the pile. This is the page that he called The Strange Case of Michael Cravey, a.k.a. Thomas Brinkley. This is where I'm talking about him having done a lot of research, but he also starts talking about a lot of crazy crap. I'm telling you, this guy goes from 0 to 1,000, and you don't understand why unless if you have the background in some of this that I do, where I can see, or I have known there to be an example of somebody actually inserting a statement that is essentially the punchline of an article like this, or a comment or a statement, where that's where the truth of their intent is revealed. You know, what it is that they're trying to affect, what's the possibility there, what is it they're trying to make you think or subconsciously embed, and you can see when that happens sometimes. So other people won't see it, but it will, to me, seem glaring. And let me just see, and I want you to know that this is a lot of text, but this is just half. There's another full half that you don't see here. We're not going to look at all of this, but just to give you an idea, it says here, and this is in reference to the Mike Potter thing, right? Because they were saying Mike Potter was a name that Michael had said in the conversation that wasn't clear, wasn't completely elaborated on, or revealed, that this couple at the university had with Michael before he stabs them. Mike Potter, like, I'm here to meet Mike Potter, or Mike Potter, do you know him, or are you him? Well, that name came up, and so good old Poseidon decides to put it into the mix in terms of his research, and we get this. One new piece of evidence is that Cravey was making statements about a Mike Potter before he stabbed Cliff Preston, who goes into the University of Florida on the holidays as a, quote, baby cuddler. I just want you to know the baby cuddler part, which is cute. I mean, it's really cute. You got to love these guys. There's no shortage of, well, I mean, you know, the baby cuddler thing. It's like, you know what? They might as well just take the, you know, oh, I have the vapors. Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's ridiculous. This is from a story. This is like this is the joke, right? It's funny. It's for kids. It's like a story for kids about the bad evil guy, right? Ooh, where's the evil mask? Ah, he has the wild red hair, and he's like a character from Batman, and he has to be defeated, or he's in trial again, and the opposition is the baby cuddler, who sits there, and he's got like the angelic halo, and he's got like 5 or 10 babies he's cuddling at all times in court. I don't know what to say about it, but it just seems like that's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. And in fact, whoever added this part, you know, we know that he did. Here, Poseidon decides to put the baby cuddler part in. Why? I mean, isn't there a lot of other details to this guy's life? But it's important to note, and he links to the fact that Mike Potter is a volunteer baby cuddler. And by the way, he goes in on the holidays as a baby cuddler. I mean, that's another point he wants to stress. I read in an article where he was described as a baby cuddler as well, and it wasn't about that. It was about him and his work and how is he doing after recovering from this incident, right? And they put in the baby cuddler part, and note that he goes in on Christmas Day to cuddle babies. And it's like, okay, I guess somebody has to, right? But isn't that kind of, well, all right. Would you not do that? I mean, hell, I didn't know you could go in and cuddle babies. What do I got to do? Do I sign up and say, hey, I really like cuddling babies. You want some baby cuddling? I don't know. I got to stop talking about that. Anyway, so he says the Mike Potter that Cravey referred to is not likely to be the meteorologist at WCJB TV 20 who was on air weekends between 5 and 7 a.m. and at noon. A more interesting suspect is the Mike Potter of Salt Lake City, Utah, who is open to some conspiracy theories and has posted on a couple of threads where Thomas Brinkley also commented. Whoa, 2 people commenting on the same thread of a conspiracy related thing? I mean, how beyond coincidence is that, right? That's never happened in the history of the world. The salient point here is that Mike Potter, quote, advocates, or he links here, advocates reform of marijuana legislation. I mean, you understand what he is saying? He is saying he advocates reform of marijuana laws. Ha, the wicked weed. I mean, what would you reform? I mean, I just pick one thing that you would change about marijuana legislation. I mean, I just can't fathom. It's like trying to ask me to, write and edit the Bible or something. Anyway, as does Congressman Steve Cohen, whom Potter includes among his Facebook likes. I mean, what? Now we're way, way into weed and this guy who isn't the right guy. But anyway, hey, the research of Poseidon, he's thorough. And so did Cravey. On a Facebook page that ran a story of Morgan Freeman saying weed prohibition was, quote, the stupidest law possible, Thomas Brinkley agreed that it was stupid. Oh my God. I'm surprised that didn't make the headlines of the New York Times, to be honest. Actually, I am surprised it didn't, because I'm very respectful of the New York Times. I know how that's quality. That's some quality shit, funky, bad, nasty shit that goes way back, right? Anyway, however, that Mike Potter runs a boat service in Murray, Utah, south of Salt Lake City, and could hardly be expected to have made a 2,200-mile journey to supply an internet contact with a drug. Whoa, okay, whoa, boom, to supply contact with a drug. Wait a minute, am I supposed to be like in a daze? He's expecting us, the reader here, this Poseidon character, to just be kind of stumbling through this in kind of like a trance, and then you get to the point, oh, the drug, yeah, he was going to get the drugs. So he was picking up drugs from Mike Potter. So is this the Potter? Where was he going to get the drugs from? This Potter? What? What drugs? He's just throwing it in there. There is no evidence that the two were ever in contact. And the White Pages lists 80 Mike Potters in Florida alone, albeit only one from Gainesville. So he says, again, he's talking about a guy who's out in frickin' Utah who has no connection to Michael whatsoever, except these very tenuous, bizarre threads that this guy believes. I mean, they're like spiderweb thin threads. And yet he's going to say that that's the Potter out there in Utah, despite there being 80 Potters in Florida and one in Gainesville. And that's probably not the guy who's the weather guy. Or it is. I don't think so, though. I think he lives outside the city limits. Anyway.
Okay, I am now switching to, actually I had to get something to eat, and I was tired, so I'm now picking this up later, and I'm just going to narrate the remainder here since we've got the last section here after A Notable Detractor, which is just simply entitled Nicholas Cravey, his younger brother. But that's interesting, and I do have some video of him there. And some other guy who goes by Liquid Smooth, and we'll see how he's an interesting character. Now, this here is something from Poseidon, this was posted on March 9th, so again, just less than a week after the 3rd. And what's interesting is I think this is kind of some credibility building done by Poseidon. This is at one of the conspiracy forums, I forget which, maybe it's a Lunatic Outpost. But here's what he's done. He's gone ahead and he put some very detailed information in here. He says he says, here is my coarse-grained timeline. And then he begins with talking about his younger brother Nicholas's high school background and how he was interested in videography and cinematography, which is true. He's been involved in that for a long time, so he's pretty experienced now. He used to film their football games. And then he goes on to show, this is some information that basically seems like a data dump, but it's well done. And I think what he's doing is building credibility for himself before he goes in for the attack. So he's laying it out, and he's getting the appreciation, I believe, from the folks at the, visiting this thread and posting there. Very interesting how that's done. Wouldn't surprise me at all, but could be crazy. Now, here he is. This is now on the 10th, just a day later, and then I'll go back. There's one more from the 9th. But on the 10th, this is one of the more interesting ones in my opinion, because basically he then pretty quickly switches to this guy. He says in this post, anyone who is prepared to take the word of some anonymous commentator on YouTube rather than actual reports by named journalists is likely to get suckered into relaying disinformation. Yeah. Named journalists. Wow, the credibility is just through the roof. So anyway, this is American Everyman, by the way, who goes by Willie Loman. His name is Scott Creighton. He's a great journalist. I have my beef with him in the way he dealt with Michael before Michael was supposedly killed on the 3rd, and also how he then subsequently has just been hammering home the idea that Michael was a poor researcher, and that he says he does, to his credit, he says he doesn't believe that the storyline they've given us is correct. He smells a rat, and he'll say it point blank, but I don't appreciate some of the things he says about Michael and how he describes him. It seems a bit like he's suddenly stepped out of the professionalism and into the egotism and weirdness. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but let me show you here or read you his response to Poseidon, which is just a few hours later that day. He says, "Rather hypocritical of you, wouldn't you say? After all, I don't recall you signing your real name to any of those Holocaust-denying articles on your website that you link to via your avatar. I have to assume that's your site, correct? So I guess by your own logic, people should be very wary, or should be wary of being suckered in by your disinformation, right?" And also, I want to note that Poseidon did not dispute or refute that was his site, and I do think it is. Very interesting here in the way that Scott perceives him. Apparently, Poseidon is not viewed. Scott had taken the time to go and see what Poseidon's site was all about by checking out the link that he attached to his avatar on his blog. Okay, so again, backing up to the 9th, we have a follow-up post. Now, this one, I believe, is at, if not at Scott's, it was at one of these conspiracy sites. Now, this is just nasty. And so here's where I'm going to critique Poseidon. It's unfortunate that this guy had to come and do this, because I know he had an input, an effect on the overall process so far. And I know some people were impacted by what he had to say. You know, not everybody will back up their suspicions or their interest by pursuing it beyond someone's comments. If they seem authoritative enough, if it seems like an interesting or logical storyline, then they may just accept it on the face of it and move on. So this one begins, and this is essentially where he goes in for the attack. So what led Cravey to go berserk? One unlikely possibility is that Cravey had a slight stroke, resulting in the same PBA, emotional incontinence, that his father had after his stroke. This would explain the laughing that was heard by the witness. Now, I gotta just say, this is really bizarre and low. I mean, what the hell is the point of saying this? The guy's dad had a stroke, which essentially incapacitated him, and he had this additional issue of uncontrolled emotional outbursts, which is usually just like a reflexive laughing or crying that comes from being really out of control of that, and it's not reflective of your actual emotional state or anything. It's just like a tic or something, except to an extreme. And it's not common. It's fairly rare, and really exclusive to people who have had strokes and then been in that situation. And now he's talking about this, introduces the concept as if he says it's unlikely that Cravey. What the hell is he trying to say? Yeah, he didn't have a stroke like his dad. Yeah, he didn't take, it's like, I'm not a woman either. So it's unlikely that I'm a woman. Yes, it is, isn't it? Ah, good job, Poseidon. I'm not sure how that plays into what he's about to do, because then he goes in for the attack. So he goes then on to say, as he's trying to narrow down the possibilities here, he's really spread out. He's got such an open mind. He wants you to see all the possible angles. He doesn't want you to draw any conclusions too quickly. So then he says, there is even room for a conspiracy theory involving Cravey being targeted by directed energy weapons, such as the active denial system. Oh man, here's a guy that is, well, he's probably ignorant of what really goes on with, let's say, targeting or attacking people with microwave radiation, which is, it is directed at them slightly, but certainly no one is going to be using terms like directed energy weapon. And certainly not active denial system. You know, that sound system that hits you with, piercing sound. It's really debilitating. And also, it's not an active denial system. Well, it is technically. I don't think they refer to it as that. But the kind that hits you with sound in the lower range that causes you to expel your bowels and stuff. But then he says, at least it's not quite in the realm of Judy Wood, but it's still less likely and less economical on postulates. Oh, that the hypothesis that Cravey had a stroke which itself is well below the preferred hypothesis, unless confirmed by autopsy. Wow. So just throw that first paragraph out. But it gives you an inclination as to the background, what's truly going on with Poseidon. This isn't an accident. Okay. The next paragraph, not very interesting, but he's getting closer. But the third is where it gets good. There is no need for conspiracy theories about directed energy weapons, and it's unlikely that Cravey suffered a stroke. Yes, it is. The best hypothesis is the simplest, which is that Cravey is simply a nut. Oh, he does not disappoint. And this is soon apparent from watching his videos. If he changed his mind about Ron Paul and concluded that there was no hope, then he continues to hate humanity, reverts to playing the role of the Joker character, and totally enjoys being a part of the 0.1% of psycho-evil. And then to skip on, he goes on to talk about, I suggest his following of Alex Jones and Webster Tarpley left him hopeless, confused, and paranoid, blah, blah, blah. Warped his mind, turned him into a psycho. Down here in the final paragraph on this page, it says, Cravey claims, quote, so, operation based on me, was blown by me, with operatives ending up dead because of me, and the cover-up effectively exposed by me. And then he says, he asks us, but if he had any evidence, why doesn't he provide any? So here's an example of where he is assuming the reader here, or the persons who have been engaging in this thread at this particular blog or forum, are not going to go and dig deeper, so they won't verify this is true or not by watching some of Michael's videos. So, but he wants you to think that he doesn't even have any evidence. Why doesn't he present any evidence of it? Well, number one, he does present evidence. Number two, it's not wise to present some evidence. Some evidence is best kept to yourself, or rather, is best kept for a number of reasons. It might, if only to not to be slander. What if you've got something wrong? What if you're wrong or slightly off base, and therefore you've opened yourself up to a world of hurt? Or what if you say something out loud? Post something that is point blank, just a head-on direct hit, and it upsets the perpetrators of these horrible events. I mean, these are not weak people that don't have the power. They may be weak-minded or in morals, but they're not going to refrain from taking you out if they need to. I mean, they'll call in a crew within hours to literally have you, they'll stage it too. They'll do all kinds of stuff. I mean, they'll hang you and then say you stubbed your toe and died. They'll also, shoot you in the head 3 or 4 times and then claim it was suicide. They'll type up a suicide letter in a foreign language and then say that's your suicide note. Anyway, you get the idea. So anyway, I just wanted you to see what he's really all about. Now, the final paragraph is one that really is just adding insult. He says in this final short paragraph, let's hope that Fetzer, Smallstorm, Tracy and company don't start up a new conspiracy theory in which Michael Cravey's death was faked, and the local police, the press, Maureen and Nicholas Cravey, etc., are amongst the conspirators. When he says Tracy here, he's referring to Professor James Tracy of the Florida area and a blogger at memoryholeblog.com, which is a great, very good blog, very, very great, intended comments from very good people, very intelligent people. So there's a lot of insight there on anything that Professor Tracy posts there. But, what he's trying to do is he's also trying to, and this is also indicative, this is something that Scott Creighton does. He puts Fetzer together with Tracy and then says that who would do that, as if one of the two is the bad guy. And in his case, he's assuming it's Fetzer. Here with Poseidon, he wants everybody to be the bad guy. Fetzer, Smallstorm, and Tracy. Those are 3 of the smartest people I happen to know. Well, I know 2 of the 3. Anyway, I'm just saying it's ridiculous here what he's doing, and it's quite clear that it's a hit piece on Michael and a slight hit piece on some of the aspects of the story to kind of manipulate the facts to present a case more pleasing to the operatives that are, the planners. They want to make sure that they steer us away from the truth. So anything you look at here, you might want to look at the exact opposite as being true as well, and potentially true, at least to pursue it in case it is, because this guy's a nut. So now we'll look at some of the stuff that he did when he got onto Tracy. Well, actually, this is now a post from Scott Creighton on his American Everyman Willie Loman blog. He quotes, first of all, he puts the quote in here about, I suggest Cravey's following of such sources as Alex Jones and Webster Tarpley. Anyway, he quotes that first, and then Scott says, so your conclusion is that he was radicalized by extremist elements on the internet until he, quote, snapped and decided to attack regular good folks for the fun of it? That is your position? You lump James Tracy in with Jim Fetzer? I think I have allowed you about enough access to my site. And let's see, you link back to a website that mentions 9/11 truth and Holocaust denying in the opening paragraph. And recently you wrote for that site, quote, and whichever the Sandy Hooker selects, he or she must provide evidence to prove it. Otherwise, the Sandy Hook hoax theories can be consigned to the garbage bin for once and for all. Yeah. On that note, bye-bye. And that's when, apparently Scott just bans this fucker, you know. Thanks, guy. And yeah, thanks, Scott, actually. If it weren't for some of the stuff that I disagree with you on your take or your analysis of Michael and some of what he has done and how he's worked with you in a sense in that he plagiarized you. It's ridiculous, this plagiarism thing. It's like Scott wants to think that anything he does in the way of writing, if it's a minute fact, if it's a known fact, or if it's even a theory, that's it. It's you have to be credited if you ever mention that. And in fact, Michael oftentimes does. And I think in one instance he mentions where he got a couple of small, kind of connecting points. And this is regards to, in reference to the Aurora shooting. He also, I think he and I both use a little of each other's material, not directly the material, but just the concepts or the ideas, some of the points. Anyway, now we'll go to the last one. This is, Nicholas Cravey. And this is a quote from one of the early reports where they had interviewed him, and they had a few comments from him, and he wraps it up by saying, quote, I will not stop investigating until I know. Now, I'll move on to, see, he had some videos. He put 2 videos out, very short. One was 10, one was 13 minutes, one after the other, that were just of him talking. This is Nicholas. Him talking to the people out there on the internet, some of the people that he, collaborated with through his YouTube, the interested parties on YouTube, all of that, which would include myself and many others. Well, certainly a few key people, and then the rest of his subscribers and so forth. So he puts these videos out. Now, I couldn't find them anymore. I never did acquire them. I only watched them, and that was initially, and then after that, there was nothing more. Now, there was an interesting character who put those out, and we'll learn a little bit about him. His name he went by Connecting Dots. He is a guy who claimed that Nichols reached out to him, or that he made contact. He offered to, he researched and found the email addresses of a few of these people in Michael's family, and said, I want to check out how I might be able to help you or something. I don't know if that's in fact true, but either through that or through just randomly being connected with by, since he's connecting dots, and so Nicholas might have thought, well, maybe he can connect the dots for me. Who knows? But Nicholas got in touch with him, apparently, he says, and then he uploaded these videos, of which then Connecting Dots 2, I think, on his YouTube channel, also posted, and on his blog, claiming that they were directly from Nicholas. Now, that's not true, because just prior to that, maybe even just a few 3-4 hours before that, if I don't have that wrong, but it's certainly very shortly after, or before rather, Connecting Dots posts this article and puts it up on his YouTube channel. These videos appear on the internet clearly, and I think it was actually on an account named Nicholas Cravey, in which this video, or these 2 videos, are the only things there. Okay, so it's pretty clear that the potential exists for him just making all that shit up, and basically he had no contact with Nicholas. All right? So that's just got to be known, number one. And you know what? The bottom line is, I don't think he did have any. But if he did, that still doesn't rule out there being an operation going on and them being involved in it. Either Connecting Dots or Nicholas, or both of them in collaboration on this. Okay, but the first guy we're going to look at here, well, rather, we're going to look at the videos, but I could only find them embedded in the work of Liquid Smooth, which his real name is Chris something, which he admits to and all that, but he goes by Liquid Smooth. And this guy's so pessimistic. He's about the most cynical guy. He thinks everyone's in on it. Everyone. It's like all a conspiracy. It's like a conspiracy to make everyone think there's a conspiracy. So so Michael's alive, which he always calls him Thomas Brinkley too, by the way. And he has countless videos where he's, talking about this issue and then also, calling us all out. He's called me out on my channel, not on my channel, but I think, actually no, he's come to my channel and posted a couple comments and said, you guys all know that Thomas Brinkley's still alive, right? You know that. And so you're all just spreading disinfo so that we're all working on the wrong thing. I tell you what, here's what we're going to do. Let's look at the first clip which is actually just the setup. This is from the video in which we do have the Nicholas Cravey videos played, which are important, and I do want to look at some of that. But we'll start just by getting a feel for Liquid Smooth here.
Alright, this is Chris Lucas of theProtestantView.com, and this is part 2 of my video about Thomas Brinkley. And, just odd things I think about him, and basically I want to talk about like connecting the dots in his interview. Now, I haven't watched this yet, don't really have time to watch a video and then make a video comment, and so I'm going to see how this works, and just kind of play some stuff and make some comments on it. Have no idea how long it's going to be. I thought the last video was only going to be a couple of minutes long. It turned into an hour because I wasn't really anticipating on finding all the little things I found. So anyway, I'll start this.
So there you go. You get a feel for, what a guy. I don't know. I mean, his take is valid in some ways, and in other ways it's totally invalid. And also, I think he's not really into it, and he's a poor researcher. He's not doing the work. I think he's one of these guys that, I'm not really hounding on him because I know what it's like when you're new to this stuff. Maybe you're kind of still in shock almost, or you're just not experienced and you don't understand that you need the patience. Otherwise, you're going to make assumptions too early. You'll declare your convictions when really you should maintain an open mind all the time. Now the issue of the videos. I'm just going to play excerpts of this video. It is interesting in a number of ways. And I want to point out one thing. We're going to watch part of it, and I'm going to say this, and I no offense to Nicholas because I could be wrong. But first of all, I have a problem with, in one instance, it appears as if he just bursts in laughter at an inappropriate time, and it seems almost like duping delight. And if you look it up, if you're not familiar with it, and that's unfortunate because that, if it is in fact duping delight, then what is he duping us about? And it would be something relating to this issue of his brother's demise, apparently. Now, another thing is that there are a few other issues in here I don't appreciate, like, for instance, the fact that he does admit his connection to the police department. He does. He does admit that he works with them. And this is ongoing. This is not, it didn't end and it didn't begin with this event with Michael. So he admits that to his credit, I guess. However, I believe that that also is just an indication, or it's a possibility of an indication that he was using this opportunity by making these videos, where he's asking, for the public to share with him, and he's sharing with the public information to get to the bottom of this. He's using it as an opportunity potentially to eliminate himself as a suspect involved in this by saying, "Look, I admit that I work with the police department." But there's a lot to that story. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I'd be very interested to hear what Nicholas has as an excuse for the amazing coincidence of working with Ben Tobias as a co-producer of that Gainesville PD cop beat, or whatever it's called, monthly. And it just so happens that Tobias is the police spokesperson who we see on the news reporting all of the events that morning involving Michael's demise, in which he's asked, is there a motive? He says, well, I don't know. And it never comes up that he just so happens to be working directly and only with one other producer of that monthly segment, and that's Nicholas Cravey, Michael's brother. And he knew during those interviews, I'm sure, he knew Michael. There's no doubt he knew. But he definitely worked very regularly with Nicholas, who happened to be Michael's brother. You feeling me on that? All right.
My name is Nicholas Cravey. I am the brother of Michael Cravey. And I'm making this video because, I've talked to a lot of people in our family and our neighbors and our friends who come to me concerned about Michael, and I know that the online community that Michael was part of, you guys, it was something that, he felt very connected to, and so I wanted to reach out to y'all and let you know that we're thinking of y'all, and we are taking a lot of things into consideration. That being said, we want to say thank you so much for your efforts and everything that you have, and the questions that you continue to ask, because we can see how much y'all also care about the situation that happened with Michael. I'm going to be referring down to my notes every once in a while, just so you know, so I can keep going. Just so you can understand who I am, my name is Nicholas Cravey. I am 24 years old, and I live in Gainesville, Florida. I also attend University of Florida. I work for a video company, and I actually work a lot with the police department. And so I actually know quite a few people in the police department. Well, let me explain kind of the place that we're from. Gainesville and Dixie County. Dixie County is our hometown. They're an hour apart. They're very small communities. Like, it's not abnormal for everybody to know everybody kind of thing. Like, half of my family is pretty much in law enforcement. And so when we got the call of what was going on, I was immediately getting a hold and talking to people who are like our friends, our family friends, and who are in law enforcement, to try to, try to handle the situation in the least lethal way possible, in the safest way possible. And I understand that it actually went a very different way. However, the events of that day, I have to know and be sure, in my mind and in myself, what I really feel. And I really do not feel any form of anger to any of the people involved that is inside of this community. These people are very much real people, and they are very much impacted by the situation that happened here. So I think that's something I'd like for you all to keep in mind about this, is that this is actually happening, and it is something that is hard to wrestle around, but it's something that I wanted to be sure from the beginning that these are the actions that were taken, and there was a terrible thing that happened.
See, one thing I noticed is that he says this actually happened. Like, he's trying to stress that it actually happened. See, I mean, that's one of the things I don't believe, is that this really happened.
It's something that is hard to wrestle around, but it's something that I wanted to be sure from the beginning that these are the actions that were taken, and there was a terrible thing that happened. That being said, now that you kind of understand sort of the situation that we're in, we know a lot of people, and so it's not as abnormal to say this person meant really no harm in this situation, other than the fact that there was just something violent happening that day. Okay, so there's a huge confusion, because for me and my brother, we've always talked about things like, not like this, but we've always talked together, and I've had no inkling of him being at all aggressive. In fact, this person, and anybody else can tell you this, and I've heard a lot of stories from a lot of people, he's not an aggressive person. And he would help anybody out. Like, he'd be driving down the street, and then like somebody's car would break down, and he would just jump out and help that person. Like, that's just how he was. And I think that he asked a lot of questions, and he was entertaining a lot of ideas that a lot of people have a hard time grasping, or at least entertaining the idea of it. Which is probably good and bad in itself, because it's good that from what I can tell with myself, it was good that I continued with things that Michael probably would have thought were, Michael knew that what I did with my job and with my, pursuing my career, these are all things that were good things, and he understood that, and I don't really feel, like Michael didn't know that I had something that I was doing, but Michael was into something that he felt, we needed to be aware of. And it was something that I noticed too, because see, I work a lot, and I worked, 7 days a week, all the time. Even if my job was telling me like take time off and stuff like that, but I never really stopped working. Even when on my days off, I would continue to do the stuff I did. And this kind of opened my eyes and made me slow down and made me go, okay, well, life is short, that kind of thing. The normal way of thinking. Now, I had a hard time, just going, Michael went crazy, because, well, you had this guy who for, as long as I've known him, like 4 years ago, told me, like, I'm going to be made out to look crazy, something really bad's going to happen, so here's my passwords and here's my, my things, so that you can kind of take up the slack whenever it's gone. But he told me everything would be all right, and so I've always, kind of listened to my brother. I've always listened to my brother. I've never not listened to my brother, but I've never pursued the things that he's pursued. That being said, I really had a hard time letting things go, and I still do, but
I keep wondering, does this kind of seem to you like it's setting him up to be like the next truther? Like, oh, my brother died, my brother was killed suspiciously, and I'm looking into this, and now he's gonna start to get maybe a big name in the truther community because he's looking into it because his brother died in some mysterious way, and he's looking into it, just tossing this thought out there. But that's what I'm wondering, is this dude being set up to be, I don't know, like some next big time truther, and this is like the way to maybe like the grassroots truther community, to be like the big name in the grassroots, like all the dudes that aren't like Alex Jones, who I think is a shill, but like the guys who have to do the guys and the girls that have to do their little webcam videos from home and things like that and talk about the truth, and like little bits of free time they have from work. And now he's like this guy who never did truther videos, and he's like, oh, I just looking into my brother's death, and maybe he breaks off and starts doing all these kinds of things, and this is like a way to get the whole truther community behind this guy. Just a thought. And if you watched my last videos, I'm real suspicious that Michael Cravy's even dead. But anyway, I'll let it continue.
There are things that have come to light to me that I don't feel comfortable sharing right now, but I'm working with to completely understand. But I know you guys want to do the same thing. So let me think about this. One of the interesting things is that his iPhone was never found. So his iPhone was never found, yet his battery was still running for 11 to 14 days afterwards. I looked at the bill cycle online, and it only up to 11 days can I see it, and I can see that the mobile data has been used every hour for 11 days after that, and some other interesting things that I'm unable to share with you right now. So, but I guess what you can help me with is it possible to locate his iPhone? And even now, if it's possibly dead. And also, can an iPhone really last for 11 days running its mobile data? And why would mobile data ding every hour? Is there a certain app that would be doing that?
You know what, folks? I keep wondering, if they're really just stringing you all along. Is this just something where it's just going to keep you, totally, they keep you totally engaged into Thomas Brinkley, where you're not spending your time looking into any real truth? I mean, I kind of wonder, like his brother and Thomas Brinkley, Michael Cravey, they're all in on this, like, let's kind of like pull one over on the truther community, and kind of have like this sort of real life sort of movie, like what happened to Thomas Brinkley, and look at all this crazy stuff, and let you guys, spin your wheels thinking of all these crazy things that could have happened, and maybe they pick like the best thought, and then they go from there or whatever, even though none of it's real. And it's like you guys are just like spinning your wheels in the mud. I mean, I really doubt any of this really happened. And I just wonder is he coming up with clues like this because they really do exist, which I doubt, or is this just something to throw out there to get to keep you conspiracy people, who are like who believe this Thomas Brinkley guy, to keep your guys' wheels spinning and keep you latched onto this. Just a thought.
That would be really interesting to know. There were some things that Michael really wouldn't have pinpointed anything right here in Gainesville, and so I was kind of curious, like, okay, what is going on in Gainesville that Michael thought about, and that would be something to do with, and this is just me wondering as I look back, and I don't know what I would do with this information other than just understand, but is there something to do with a post that Miss Winters posted? This is what he says back in this January video, Cold Wild Ride. I'm curious if somebody could help me figure out what that post was and who Miss Winters is. Now, I've heard that it could be a person named Regina Winters, who I think was a reporter in the Aurora case. I'm not too sure. And the Mike Potter one was interesting, and I heard that Mike Potter may be a person on the jury for the Aurora case. Now, I have no clue with these people's associations with Michael or anything like that. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I'm simply trying to understand. What happened, and I know that it may be possible that you may never understand what happened. But I feel like with Michael, he left a very, very detailed and precise electronic trail that was left for a reason, and it was very, very easily traced. And so that's why I'm sort of making my way around this. So I mean, that's a good place to start. Now, as far as as the report goes, that came out just recently, that's pretty accurate. I mean, it's pretty accurate in the sense that there are some things that are very confusing in it. Now, on his bank account, he left Bell. He got gas at Bell at 6:05 in the morning, and that would make getting to campus and the University of Florida a possibility, because it would have been an hour later until he stabbed somebody or the incident occurred. And we all know that timing on things, like when something is happening, you can't be exactly precise on it. If somebody's coming after you with a knife, I don't know how you could actually technically look down at your watch and be like, it's now this time. You know what I mean? So, it being 6:55 is probably really, really accurate, but I don't know.
Okay, here in the end, I just want to add, this is a message to Nicholas. Look, you put those videos out. I don't know about your connections to connecting dots, or if there ever was one. And it doesn't matter to me, because that doesn't involve you per se. If he's just basically making the claim, he could have just been trying to appeal to his subscribers for whatever purpose, for whatever gain, monetary or otherwise. But you stopped doing anything after that. Never saw that you were involved in any further collaboration. It's been now over a year, man. I think you've seen my stuff, and I think you know from some of the other work out there who I am, and that I've been involved in this in terms of trying to get to the bottom of it from the outside of the family and friends. I tend not to get involved. I tend not to make calls and contact directly. I want to observe from the outside. Well, I've done that for over a year now. And I want to talk to you because I think there could be a way we can work together to figure this out. If anything, we can touch base and just share a couple of details that maybe you were curious about or that I was, that and fill some of these gaps. So I say here, Nicholas, get in touch if you'd like my help figuring out what happened to Michael. I have no doubt fellow YouTubers who knew Michael would vouch for my sincerity and would encourage you to reach out to me. And I really mean that. I mean, all of the folks that I've known that I also know were familiar and knew Michael, I would virtually guarantee would vouch for me and say, yes, I don't, in other words, they would say that, yeah, his intent is sincere, he's authentic, and who knows, maybe, I don't know. It doesn't really matter whether or not I'm a competent researcher or investigator or some kind of PI level, or I'm psychic or something. That's not the point. It's more the point that maybe there's some trust here that can be built. And I have my suspicions too. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what the hell happened. So, and you claim in your video that it did happen the way it happened. In other words, they have the facts straight. And it's like, look, man, come on. If they have the facts straight, then tell me about that hatchet, and I want to know a little bit more about tell me why it is that it makes sense that he's got the hatchet. I know that there's a brief excerpt in that report that his mother, they just basically throw it in. His mother said that she had purchased him a hatchet to do some clearing of brush in the yard recently. Come on, man. First of all, number one, who does that? Maybe. I'm not buying it. That seems ridiculous. So where did that hatchet come into this and why? And if you argue that that's not the case, if you're saying, well, it did happen, okay, that's not good enough. There's got to be more to why he would then, how about why he charged him? I mean, you say that it doesn't make sense and he went crazy. Well, how did he? And you've got access to all those accounts so that you can see the iPhone billing stuff and can see the pinging and all that. Hey, didn't you ever think to call your buddy? Hey, man, can you do me a favor and find out what's up with that phone? Did they get a GPS located on it? I mean, come on. You don't think they located the phone? Well, where was it? You would know if they're hiding it from you. You would get the vibe from that response. One way or another, I think you could find out where that phone was. And maybe it was just in their evidence. Well, they don't report finding it. Maybe it turned up. Maybe somebody found it, and then that was how it was able to remain charged for so long. Still had some life in the battery because maybe it was even hooked up to a charge at some point. And then it could have been indefinite. And what's the status now? Has it died out? I could go on and on and on. So that is all. Thank you very much. I think the next time I do one of these and it's about Michael, I'm going to have some more definitive information. And there are a few parts here that I've omitted or didn't get to because I was focusing on these subjects. But we'll do something in the next round here that I just feel that we're getting somewhere now. And it's good because we're coming back around. This thing died for many months, and it's been rekindled. And so thank you for watching, and please share with me whatever you can in the comments, and I will definitely be reading them, and I thank you all. I appreciate it.